Hey there, and welcome to an episode of Selling AI. Today, we're diving into what it's like selling AI technology into Maritime, a tight-knit industry where relationships are everything and everybody knows everyone. I have Dylan Mason on the show today. Dylan is the VP of Sales at Marcura, a maritime data and technology company that's genuinely AI forward, building agents for things like charter party risk analysis, automated voyage instructions, and claims processing. Here's what makes the conversation interesting. Dylan's been in this industry for years, starting at Vesson and Voyager Portal, and now a sales leader at a company that's pushing the boundaries of what the new technology can do in shipping. But he's trying to do it while maintaining the relationship-driven approach that the industry kind of demands. So we'll dive in today's episode. Dylan and I will talk about how we're balancing leveraging tools with building real relationships, how he's thinking about AI adoption across the team, but also from an industry perspective. What does it mean when they're bringing up AI in conversations? What are they looking for when they're trying to drive new technology into their tech stack? So we'll dive into the tools, workflows, and everything maritime on this episode. So let's get into it. Hey, Dylan, thank you so much for being here today with us, and welcome to the show.
Of course. Thanks, Warren. Appreciate the intro.
Awesome. So first, give us a background. You've been in this space, maritime, for years now. Can you tell me, how has the industry evolved, specifically selling into the industry evolved over your career?
Yeah, been in the industry, I would say energy and maritime for the better part of 10 years. So started my career at Kinder Morgan, like a mid-size, midstream oil and gas company. I would say in the industry, especially early on in my career, very old school, a bit barbaric. Everyone has their own way of working and doing things. And even when I started my career, it was a lot of in-house built systems, a lot of Excel spreadsheets, file cabinets still, and a lot of note taking. So I think, early on in my career, specifically, like you said, selling into the industry, there's a lot of resistance to change, a lot of change management that had to be done with each part of the sell. And I think in some of these larger companies, we're working with some of the largest shipping, trading, energy majors in the world. So there's a lot of technical hurdles that you have to go over as well. So I think even in, maybe 2017 or 2018, we're selling cloud SaaS solutions, which other industries have been doing for years, right? And I'm telling these folks that are using an on-premise system why it's better to go to the cloud. But again, there's a lot of benefits for them moving away from having your IT people run these updates, which is costly and time consuming, to saying, hey, we're going to outsource and you're going to have the latest and greatest every time you log in. But yeah, a lot of it was, we have a certain way of working. We don't want it to be one way of working, or kind of getting everyone on the same tool. To then, now I think obviously with COVID happening and stuff, everyone then was knocking on our door and jumping to the cloud. I think a lot of sales leaders joke at who was the account executives at Zoom in 2020? They were laughing all the way to the bank. But I think historically the industry has been very slow to adopt. And I think honestly in the past 2 years, I've seen a huge uptick in appetite for new solutions, and specifically kind of getting into AI.
That's awesome. When you started out in your first role, had you had any background in the industry in the past, or were you coming in green? And if you were green, was it how did it compare to what you would have expected from a sales role? Was it shocking, or was no, you had a different perspective and this is how it actually is? What was that transition like into the industry?
Yeah, I love this story, but I was the first one in my family to go to university. And I was at LSU in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge, and they had the #1 internal audit program in the world. Okay. And I was like, well, I don't have any job leads, so I see all these kids in suits getting internships from massive companies. I was like, I'll give this a go. And so they have this formal resume drop process. It's like the draft, right? And so they're like, hey, if you drop your resume here, they might pick you. So if you get an offer, you have to go. This isn't a summer, fling. You get the full-time offer, you got to take it. So I dropped my resume. Okay. I ended up getting a job with Kinder Morgan. So I started my career in internal audit, which is, you learn a lot, but it wasn't sales, and it wasn't exactly my cup of tea. But I learned a lot. You get full exposure to the business. So at Kinder Morgan, I was learning about all the different pipelines, inter and intrastates, and then even a bit of the upstream CO2 kind of fracking. And then I did some less glamorous projects looking at expense reports. And I saw these commercial guys seem to be having a lot of fun. How do I get into something like that? So then I moved to another smaller kind of terminals company, North America based, and was doing more like kind of commercial analytics, helping the sales guys analyze deals. So maybe if Shell comes to us and they say, hey, we want to store this product, maybe it's biodiesel or whatever they might be looking to sell, jet fuel, anything like that, or store rather. Do we have the right tank with the right liner? So I had to learn a lot about the petrochemicals industry and kind of what products work with what materials. And then helping the sales guys kind of price and manage those deals, working with engineering, making sure we have the capacity and the resources. So that's kind of where I got into more shipping and understanding the logistics at the ports and terminals and berths, how all of that works. And then from there I moved into Vessel Nautical, as you know. So I was in their Houston office, first one on the ground there, and was doing more consulting. And I think that consulting background was super helpful for my sales career. Just being able to actually understand the workflow of the clients and what these guys day to day is. So I sat next to charterers and operators for years, kind of understanding, drawing on a whiteboard, this is how we do our business, this is how it needs to work in the system. So then kind of when I transitioned and moved to London and got into a sales role, I could really, build rapport and empathy and actually understand, is this solution going to solve your problem? Like having more understanding of what the problems are and how these things can help.
That's it's really a fascinating trajectory. I have like kind of the, let's say, opposite story, in that I've always kind of been like a jack of all trades and a master of none. Even within, like I say, I was in 20 years of shipping, but each area is so radically different that I am just like a borderline novice in small parcel, international freight, and like energy and dry goods, right? Where like I'm sitting in a room with someone like yourself, or even just someone who's been on the industry side for 20 years, and I'm like completely green comparatively, even though I've been in some tangential spaces. The question, like, it's really fascinating to also see like how someone in sales, when consulting then pivoting to sales, right, or like being in the industry then pivoting to sales, can have like a deep industry knowledge about things that are completely unrelated to how to get your product into someone's hands, which is what sales is, right? But you also have like a really deep industry knowledge and like energy, and then how that energy moves around the world, right? The question I'd say is like, could you ever see yourselves like getting out of like this space? Are you like in this world for the rest of your career just because that's your beachhead? Or do you think you can get something not just even just tangential, but like 2 degrees of separation, 3 degrees of separation out of this? What would you think for your future career based on your background that I could behold?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've tried to get out of shipping a few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think especially even when we're hiring at any different company I've been at, it's kind of like, well, this guy's got a ton of sales experience. Like he sold SaaS at all these great companies, but doesn't know the industry. Or you have the other way around. This is a really good shipping guy, but like, is he going to be able to adapt? He or she be able to adapt and work at more a technology provider. So I think for the time being, I've really, really enjoyed it. And it's nice to kind of be in something for long enough where you go to a conference and you see familiar faces. It's almost kind of like a tight-knit community. And I'd say the same as you, like, maybe jack of all trades, master of none. But at least has been in one space. So I do,
Right.
I can talk the talk a bit.
Yeah, right. Exactly right.
So
I've always
I
kind of
do
been jealous.
like it.
You have like a deep network, of this type of like role. It's like you know all the players. Every industry is smaller than you think, right? So like you know all the players. No one's new, and like you're going into a new role. If you're in a tangential space, there's no upskill on the industry, and even the product base. You know what there's no brand new product space. You know what the product does and how it helps your constituents, right? So it's like really a nice launching point in any new role.
And even just moving to different competitors in the space, like having been in consulting, I'm like, oh, I might have built an integration into this tool before. Or speaking with my customers, I actually know how this works. So onboarding can be a bit easier. And then even from, like you said, the community space, maybe someone I was implementing IMOS for, helping them get ramped up, who was an operator at a shipping company, might now be a global head of operations at this point in my career.
Right. Yeah.
So, some of the best advice you get is, treat the CEO the same way you would the janitor. So you never know where people are going to end up and, who's going to stick around.
Cool. So as part of that evolution, you've gone from, let's say, an account executive to director of sales and partnerships to like VP of sales. Like, how has your day-to-day changed in that evolution of your role?
Yeah, I think probably a bit similar to you from doing a lot of different jobs or having a more non-traditional way into sales. I think the typical SaaS sales path you see is BDR, SDR, and then kind of moving your way into some sort of AE and then management role from there. I kind of bounced around a bit as well. So yeah, I think from having my hands in a lot of different projects all the time, my day-to-day has evolved quite a bit. So, I have kind of my core responsibilities and, very focused on my territory and hitting our number and everything like that. But yeah, getting to work on some really cool side projects as well, running partnerships over here. So getting to work with, different partners in the space. And then, getting involved in AI for us. So how are we optimizing our own processes using AI? Are we building AI products for the market in standalone? And how are we adding AI into our existing products to make processes more efficient?
That's awesome. Well, that's a great lead in. So Mark Hurr, your current company, is doing some really innovative stuff with AI agents. I'm going to say some terms that no one knows what they are, so I'm going to ask you to explain them in just a minute. But like, you're doing some really cool stuff, chartered party risk analysis, trying to automate voyage instructions, claims processing. So one, I'd love to hear, can you give like our lay listeners one, like at a high level, what is Mark Hurr doing for its customers? And then how are they injecting, let's say, LLMs into that process to add value? And then we'll talk about how you're actually selling that. If you could give us that description.
Yeah. So just high level, Mark Hurr is a technology provider, but also a services provider. So something we're very big on is human in the loop. So I always say, if we think about demurrage claims, which I'm sure folks not in the industry listening to this are like, what? But you can think of late fees if you want for shipping. So charging claims or claiming money back or time back for waiting. A big problem we had in shipping was data standardization. So now with AI, that's kind of been dissolved. So let's say for a software solution, we might have a statement of fact parser, which is basically a time log of activities that happen in port alongside a contract, help you calculate that time in port for demurrage. So even if you have a Rolls-Royce statement of fact parser, let's say there's 100 activities on that statement of facts, the best parser in the market might get 90 of them, right? And every time you correct, the parser is going to get smarter and, AI and how these algorithms work. But you still have to have a human intervention. So something we do at Mark Hurr, I mentioned claims, but across all of our products is have this human in the loop. So we are using AI and our customers will be using AI in our solutions to extract data or, optimize some of these processes. But we actually have people who will then validate the data that's come out from AI. And so now when let's say I'm a claims analyst or an operator, now I know when that claim has hit my desk and I see the statement of facts has all been parsed, I'm ready to kind of do my own calculation or my own version, copy for version 2. There's been 2 sets of eyes on it. The AI's processed the information, and then someone has validated this and confirmed. So yeah, that's kind of how we're using AI in terms of optimizing our existing processes within our products and driving value for our customers.
That's interesting. So I could be wrong, so correct me if I am. 2 years ago, I don't think you would have said that this standardization problem, these like complex, they're basically like legal financial documents where there's an agreement of what I agreed to pay for as part of my contract and what extra happened along the way that I owe you that came up. And it gets complex, right? Like there's 100 things that could happen in a port when a ship is in a port that you can get charged for, right? 2 years ago, I don't think you would have said the standardization problem is relatively dissolved. Like that's something that, am I correct in saying that? And like it's kind of shocking that 2 years later we feel like it's the case.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, I remember being at several different conferences, and anytime someone was talking about innovation or data or what's next, the crux of the issue was because bulk shipping, so non-containerized cargoes, is very not standard. A dry bulk statement of fact is going to look very different from a tanker, right?
Okay.
There's gangs, there's cranes, there's all of these different things. So an item or an activity on this statement of fact that you would see across all of these would be notice of readiness tendered, for example. And because agents in port, there's multiple different agents an owner or a charter could use, they might all be calling that notice of readiness something different. Not that it means anything different, but the nomenclature. So NOR tendered, or N.O.R tendered, or notice of readiness tendered. And so from a systems perspective, people were like, the industry is not going to go anywhere or improve until we can get everyone on the same page, getting this data standardized, calling it the same thing, so we can extract data from these documents and derive meaningful insights. Really understand what's going on in port, what is causing all this extra time to drive value for the business. Now with AI, that translation you can build a library of standard terms to have a million different terms, right? Hey, if you see any of these 100 things, it means that. So we've completely removed the crux of this issue. And now I think it's made people realize, okay, what other problems could we solve with AI?
That's really interesting. And I think this highlights the shift in AI that we talk about a lot, but it's hard to grasp, right? Like, so this problem, let's say 2-3 years ago, was attempted to be solved with a different version of AI, machine learning, which still exists and still has a good place, right? But that version required that you basically put 100,000 examples of what NOR could be. 50,000 are exactly the same, and then there's variation, the remaining 50,000. And you say, great, these 100,000 things are an NOR, right? So like if you see any of these, right, like this is this. So mathematically, it's likely this, right? With LLMs, we flipped that on its head, right? What LLMs did was great. We were able to translate trillions of syllables, tokens, into a model that now I could actually make a mathematical judgment without that human giving me that 100,000 term sample, right? I can make that mathematical judgment and be right, like you said, 90% of the time, right? Which is great. 90% is good. And in this space, the problem is that like that 10%, you can't just ignore. In some areas, you can ignore the 10%, right? Like sales coaching, right? I'm 10% wrong on sales coaching all the time. I'm probably 40% wrong on sales coaching all the time. If AI is 10% wrong in coaching a rep on how to close a deal, that's perfectly fine. When you're in a financial contractual situation where people are paying each other items, sometimes it's okay. No one's really worried about a couple bucks here or there. But sometimes those numbers can get big and be a problem. So the human in the loop aspect combined with 90% correctness is really like it's a sea change. 2 years ago, this was impossible. Now you're saying the problem's dissolved. Standardization in shipping is impossible, is what we would have said 2 to 30 years ago. It's really fascinating that the leap has been made. How is that like translating into how you're selling these products into your potential customers? Do you have to explain these premises? Do they care? Are they purely results based? Do they want AI? Are they skeptical of AI? All the above. What's that conversation like on the ground?
Yeah, I think 2 to 30 years ago was very different and kind of getting that change management. Now I would say selling AI, there's definitely leaders and followers in this space. I think everyone's talking about it, so it comes up. There's no one that's saying, no, I don't want this, right? So how we sell it is very different, and it's very scenario based. So the value that AI is going to drive is going to be dependent on the persona of our customers. So if I am going to a ship owner and they have a team of charters and operators, right? It's safe to assume that the operators, if we pick on demurrage again, are going to be doing those demurrage claims, right? So if I come in and I say, hey, I have this shiny new AI tool that will actually help you do all of your claims, and then with the services component, we can just take this work off of your desk. And then you can just focus on, whatever else you need to do, making sure the ship gets on there on time, have a tight P&L. If they have claims analysts, the messaging is a little bit different. And this is to go to say that there's not a one-size-fit-all product anymore, right? So how the tool can be extremely beneficial for a claims analyst is saying, how much time do you spend going back and forth with the agents to make sure you have all the right documents? Hours, days, right? Now I have everything all rubber stamped. Often I need to have the PDF on one screen and Excel on the other, and I'm typing all of these things in. So I've spent hours or days of work before I can even start doing the strategic part of my job, which is actually negotiating and settling with my counterpart. That's what they're paying you the big bucks for, not to do this monkey work of typing stuff into Excel. So how we sell AI for them is very indifferent. We're saying, hey, we're going to take this kind of bad part of your job away, this not as strategic, not as high value part of your job away, and you focus on the strategic part. And this is how AI helps you. So I think it's just the messaging is really important. And there's a lot of concern, especially in this industry, in every industry, that it's going to take our job, right? And so we're kind of pitching it as like, no, it's not going to take your job. It's going to help you do your core job better and take away a lot of like low value admin work.
Yeah, so there's a couple of great threads to pull there. So we've always, in sales in general, been making this argument, but especially in shipping where it's all about efficiency. It's generally low margin work. We're middle people. We're trying to squeeze out 7% of margin in order to add a ton of value in between, right? Like this shipping aspect is not what anybody wants to be paying for. We've always kind of been pitching like, hey, this technology will take work off your plate so you could focus on more strategic things. Most of the time they don't buy it. Some of the times it's not true, right? Have you felt the shift where people are like, you know what, there is a new piece of technology that people are talking about that has made like a leap in some areas. Do you feel there's less skepticism in that argument these days or the same pushback as always?
I would say a little bit less skepticism. Again, this is from my perspective working at Markera, but I think you have to show value. Like, right. I think recently there's been a lot of system fatigue, right? I think there was a huge adoption in especially SaaS tools. So if, when you're thinking about internally and you're working with a product team and products, telling sales, this is what we're going to take to market, it's asking those hard questions. Like, I know what questions a customer is going to ask, and I'm going to tell my team, so what? Like, how is this going to make their life better? So I think it's really getting that and showing, like, being able to articulate that value. So I think a big thing with AI, like I said, if we think about pre-fixture and post-fixture coming together and how AI improves these processes, is like deriving data from things that have happened, for non-shipping people, post-fixture operations, right? And then empowering. So what are you going to do with all that extra time in your day? Now, instead of typing stuff into Excel, you can get all of these insights from this statement of fact and from this claims data and all this other operational data, which is a treasure chest of data that people haven't really had access to. And now taking that, coupling that with, the ability that we're able to read these charter parties, these complex contracts, you can now derive insights and say, hey, every time we fix with counterparty A, we're spending so much time here. I can give this information back to my charter and say, hey, look at this really insightful information. You can now fix better charter parties and save us money or make us more money, right? So it's actually showing them this data-driven decision-making. And now that is time that they can replace this Excel or, low-level work with like insight, looking at this data and getting meaningful insights to deliver back, right?
That's really interesting too, because again, so at the moment, there's a legitimate concern that like this technology will be disruptive to overall employment, right? That there could be roles. The historical argument is that we've always worried about this and it's never happened before, but it only has to happen once, right? So like, and on this scenario, it's more likely than it's been in the past that it's going to be significantly disruptive. It's still less likely than the opposite. So in a scenario where it's actually not disruptive at all to overall employment, what might be interesting is what you just talked about. So one, you can just stop doing work that you really should have never been doing in the first place, right? Like this is just like low value work you have to do. There's like the table stakes of things you don't like to do. It's like brushing your teeth, right? Like you just got to brush your teeth, which is just like typing stuff into an Excel spreadsheet in order to execute the rest of your job. opens you up to doing much more strategic work that's beneficial for everyone, right? Like if this happened across the board, we were able to lower shipping costs by 3%, food costs might come down by 0.2%, right? So like there's an aspect there. But then great, what's the work going to get replaced with? I hadn't really thought about this concept is having access to a new data set, right? So instead of taking what happens in a port, and I'm a novice in this area, so I'll sound a little silly, what happens in a port and breaking it down into spreadsheet line items, if you could record that data even in a much more robust way and find ways to optimize what's happening, that's the strategic work. Now there's a whole new data set we have access to. Stop typing stuff into an Excel spreadsheet. We have all new brand information. And you could do a better, more strategic role. It might open up a whole new category of work to be done that's just better, right? Like then the work personally better. Not even like, I don't like doing this and I like doing this in my role. Is that kind of how like that structure is what the shift that's happening in this industry?
100%. And it's like some folks you talk to, they're seeing that, right? And so when I say this, they're like, yeah, that's what we were thinking too. And some people, you're shining a light on a problem they didn't know they had, you know?
Right.
And I've been saying for years, I'm like, we got to have a hands-free toothbrush. Like if I could have a mouth guard that's just going to brush my teeth for me, what else could I do with those 2.5 minutes?
That's interesting. It's even in this space. I was talking to someone in shipbuilding that was talking about maintenance, and ships are huge. It can take 15 minutes to walk on from one side to another side of a vessel. You're doing like repairs or inspections, like servicing up every problem that's ever come up so that when you're in an area of the vessel, you can get notified that there's something else you should look at. Could save you 15-minute walks back and forth, right? Like, so it's like these little things where this is data that you just didn't have access to before, really kind of elevates the role itself. So that's really fascinating. I love this expansion of what you have access to is interesting. I never really kind of put two and two together as to like, this is the work that needs to be done that we never had before. So that's really fascinating. Cool. Let's talk about sales process a little bit too, and then we'll dive into maybe a last question or two. At Markura, do you find that your, let's say, revenue teams are leveraging like AI themselves to help provide value faster for your customers? How is that working within the organization?
Yeah, definitely. I think, we have dedicated AI squads as well. So people that are trying to stay up to date with the latest and greatest information. A lot of R&D, trying new different things. From a sales perspective in my team, it might sound simple, but even these call transcripts, being able to have like an AI note taker on a call, one, I'm able to sit back and truly listen and, ask better questions instead of racing to write everything down that the customer or prospect is saying. And then looking at globally, so when we're taking new products to market, right, I can have the Singapore team, the US team, and EMEA take all of their call transcripts and run it through AI and be like, what are the common threads? What is a common pain point we're hearing globally? Or how does the value or the pitch differ from region to region? What's resonating in one region and maybe not another? Because like I said, everything is kind of getting more and more tailored to those specific customers versus a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, if we compare then like shipping to sales, right? The new data that we have is there's much more robust information as to what's actually functionally happening on a voyage and at port, right? So like weather delays is a big reason that demurrage comes up and you ask for it, but one of the big holy grails is like, was it really a weather delay or did something else happen? Did they move slower to save on fuel, right? Now you have access to much richer data to understand that. From the sales point, the activity that's generated that is similar to shipping, the actual what's happening in voyage, is the conversations you're having with your prospects and your customers. We really have to get to a point where we've captured all of that for all time, because even you're using new technology that might relate to something that your customers brought up 4 years ago that you don't know about, right? Now you have access to that data. It's time to capture those conversations and use that as like it's the activity that revenue teams generate, just like moving goods is the activity that shipping teams generate. So I'm glad you're using that effectively. That's really interesting. Sounds like you're in the early stages, but again, collating all those conversations globally with everyone really creates a picture as to what Markura could be doing to drive value to its customers, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. That's awesome. I'd say this, maybe last question here, just like forward looking, using, let's say, LLMs, either in maritime or in sales. How do you think one part of a process might be radically different, let's say 3 years from now, than what we've seen in the past year?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of a sales process, I think there's obviously been a lot of talk about how different sales roles and functions are going to act. In my opinion, I think salespeople are still going to have to exist, right? Everyone's going to be developing unique proprietary LLMs that solve a problem in maybe different ways. But I still think the heads of these companies and C-suite are going to want to talk to a person to explain and provide the value that this solution will offer over another. I think that human-human to relationship is actually becoming more important as we advanced in technology. And I think it'll change job roles and titles as well. I think, the SDR, BDR function, a lot of that is changing as well, right? We can automate emails, but even still, going back to the relationship side, people are looking now more and more than ever for personalization and that human touch. I've read people purposely putting spelling typos in emails now, so it looks like a human wrote it, right? So I think it's going to be really interesting how these things change.
Yeah, it's again a theme that comes up every time, and I love when something comes up randomly that hits on a theme. Is that like you worry that like LLMs will kind of like rip at the fabric of human relationships, right? So like it'll make it less authentic. Actually, like in every area, it actually makes it more authentic. We have one just like really plainly, an easy way to put it is. I speak to someone twice a year. I forget what their kids' names are and how old they are. And I try to take a guess, but I'm 40. And when I'm 45, it's going to be worse than when I was 40. But like, if I have all of those conversations, I can get a reminder as to what we talk about. We can have a much better next conversation to see like, is there anything like that we're talking about that I could make your life a little bit better with, right? An insight, an idea, someone that I know that comes along. It's same in the sales aspect, right? What we spend time on in sales is trying to figure out what's happening in your organization, right? Like what's happening? What problems are you experiencing? We should, that'll be table stakes, right? We can't walk into a call and say, great, tell me what happened on your 10K last year, because we pretend that we read 10Ks, but who's actually reading them, right? Now you can know, right? Let's get past all that. What's actually happening on the ground that I can't know that's publicly available information, where I might have a piece of knowledge that might help you say, hey, you should use us, or you should do something else to solve that problem. There's an elevation piece where I think we get really used to, it's like, I was talking to a friend, my generation, maybe not yours, Dylan. I didn't have the internet until I was like 10, right? Like it's going to be shocking to my son that I had 10 years of my life where I didn't have the internet. You can just see this as table stakes, right? Like having this data processing layer is just something that's always there and makes life a lot better. It doesn't have to be as scary as it seems sometimes. So that's really kind of like a fascinating take. Awesome. Dylan, I know you're on the road all the time. What do you have coming up? Any conferences you're going to? What's on the agenda for you in Q1? Where can people find you?
Going to be in Geneva, Copenhagen, probably Athens. So road warrior, constantly at it. Germany as well.
Awesome.
Got a bunch of conferences and just, normal work travel, seeing customers and prospects.
Dylan, I really appreciate taking the time. I love hearing good conversations about what's happening on the ground. Shipping is as hand-to-hand combat as it could be. It's a physical process, but how do we translate what data is being thrown off? How are we making that better with like data analysis? It's really a fascinating topic. So I appreciate you being on the episode today.
Thanks for having me, Warren.
Take care.